So we have the direct experience, and that's also how we learn it from our teachers. So I have had teachers in Japan or in other countries in the East. The only way of communicating was through touch.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological. For some reason, it's easier to remember the companies with lousy marketing or business practices, especially if we already have a narrative about business as being inherently bad, or if we associate business with shady practices, or if we have been exposed to marketing practices that left us feeling more manipulated than empowered and informed. We should rightly chafe at manipulative marketing practices, and this creates a challenge for many of us as we work on our marketing messages to the people that we want to serve. How do we get attention in a noisy world? How can we attract the attention of those who we want to help without resorting to the annoying attention-interrupting practices that make us want to hate marketing? I suspect that marketing is much like developing as a practitioner. It's a journey of discovery. And it's not so much about copying what someone else is doing as it is about discovering who we are, how we work, what we actually and truthfully have to say, and what aligns with our values. We've all been subjected to, air quotes here, selling scripts. And while those can be effective in manipulating people into doing something, it's at the cost of authentic communication. Would your patients be willing to see you if they knew about your marketing plan? Would they schedule an appointment with you if they were privy to how you talked with your friends about them? I'm wondering, are you relying on someone else's lines and scripts, or are you learning through your own experience of how to connect, generate trust, as well as establish and hold respectful boundaries? We've all had the experience of being lied to, of suffering through bait and switch, of being on the receiving end of less than authentic communication. This does not mean we should not step into the responsibility of effectively marketing our products and services. In fact, it's all the more reason to do so. And if you're concerned that your message might be taken as manipulative, then it's a good opportunity to see if you might indeed have a hidden hook in your communications, or if you're not being as authentic as you'd like to be. Just because we might not yet be good at something is no reason not to start, to learn, to improve, and to recognize that marketing is really nothing more than effective communication. It's not about trying to persuade someone that they need something. It's more about offering a service or product that solves a problem that your customer or patient has been looking to get solved. All right, today is a conversation about sensing, about learning in a way that is more transmitted than taught, about being able to feel your way into something instead of working out a theory. Let's get into this. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Want to get better at treating concussions and other neurological conditions? Clayton Shoe has some innovative methods. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. Later in the show, Jane offers you helpful suggestions on how to raise your rates, and Golden Flower Chinese Herbs shares a journey of healing that I think you'll recognize. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Geological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Ever found yourself listening to a geological conversation and thinking, wow, I needed to hear that? Yeah, me too. And I never know when I'm going to hear a guest say something that stops my world and reboots it with a larger perspective. If these conversations have ever helped you to feel more grounded, more inspired, or just less alone in this strange and wonderful work we do, consider becoming a member or supporting the podcast with a bit of tithing to the donation jar. It helps keep the lights on here at the Geological Sound and Motion Lab so that we can bring you these conversations every Tuesday morning. You'll find all the details at geological.com. Thanks for listening and for being a part of this.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Jafari, an acupuncturist from Los Angeles. So I started learning nanopuncture from Dr. Clayton Shu because I was facing these complex neurological conditions like stroke and MS in my clinic, and I just felt like I lacked a solid process to treat them. Brain-related issues always felt like a whole different animal, and I was looking for a clinical system that worked and could guide me through them. So after attending my first nanopuncture seminar, I was able to apply the process pretty quickly and with pretty amazing results. I remember the first stroke patient I saw afterwards was a guy who had had a stroke 2 years back, and he couldn't talk at all. And after a few treatments, he started saying a few words. And a few treatments after that, he could actually have conversations. It was pretty incredible. So this is why I feel like nanopuncture is the future of acupuncture neurology. And you can be a part of that. Their next seminar is on treating concussions and is being co-taught by both Dr. Shu and Dr. Ayla Wolf in New York City on April 26th and 27th. To learn more, visit nanopunctureseminars.com.
Philippe, welcome to Geological.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
I'm always looking forward to the conversations. I especially love the conversations I have with you guys that are in the Shiatsu world because we practice really similar stuff. Our thoughts about how we work, we're thinking about meridians, we're thinking about organs, chi, movement of blood, all these things, except you guys really put your hands on the body. And so I'm always curious about your perspectives because you have such an informed sensibility from touching people. So I can't even remember how we got connected because, in this funny podcast world, people say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. And I just know that we did get connected. And one of the things I'm really curious about is a book that you're working on about Shiatsu. Tell us a bit about how you came across this book and why it's of value.
Mm. So, yes, we are translating. Actually, we have translated already the Ampuku Zukai. So it's a book from 1827. It's from the pre-modern time in Japan. And it's quite unique because it's one of the few books who talks about manual therapy and that we got from the pre-modern time. So there are many books about acupuncture and the theory of acupuncture. But about manual therapy, there are very few books. So I guess because we as manual therapists, we have the straight experience of touching people. So we have less time to make theories somehow. Mm-hmm. So we have the direct experience, and that's also how we learn it from our teachers. So I have had teachers in Japan or in other countries in the East. The only way of communicating was through touch, to letting us experience how it was to work with the meridians, how it was to work with the muscles, through direct experience. So not so much about theory. And actually the theory of manual therapy like Shiatsu, who is has been my main study, the theory is not so elaborated. So it's we have a few books only. And actually, when I started with Shiatsu, I had only 1 or 2 books about Shiatsu. Now there are more books available. But when we look back in history, so that's why I got interested in this book. So one of my teachers gave me the book. I was lucky to get like a first edition of the book. So it's also really amazing to have a book in your hands from 1827 that have been passed down from practitioner to practitioner. So with also annotations. So the practitioners have been writing in it and giving more information for the next generations. So yeah, it's a privilege to be able to touch such a book, to smell the book, to feel the book, and then of course I had to have help to translate the book, because it's in pre-modern Japanese. So the Japanese language has been reformed a few times since then. So modern Japanese people have difficulty to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky to find some specialists who knows more about the old language and help me to translate and to understand. So it has been a long process. It has taken me a few years to work through it, to understand when they talk about different acupuncture points, or tsubos, like we call it in Japan, to understand which acupuncture points they were talking about, because some of the points we don't use the same names anymore. So it has been a whole research.
So you have something. I mean, I just love it. You're a Shiatsu practitioner. You have this book that you can hold in your hands that's a treasure trove. I mean, it's come down through the years from practitioner to practitioner, along with what each one learned, and they've written it down. I mean, it came with its own commentary from people that have been working through the material itself. That is an extraordinarily rare find for us to have. Certainly something that you would not find in the digital world. I mean, we love our digital world. Things are so quickly accessed, but to have something that has sort of the patina, it has, it's picked up, the smell of people's hands, and it, the cooking in their house, and, there's all these things that infuse this book, in addition to the knowledge in it. I mean, I just love that idea. Well, I've got plenty of books on my bookshelf too, but I don't have any books quite like that. Now, you make a distinction here about modern and pre-modern. Can you tell us a bit about the perspective of the pre-modern Japanese world when it comes to manual therapy?
Yeah, the book is quite poetic written, and like many literature from that time, it's not so easy to read it. So you need background information. So working with the book has helped me to understand more about the time, because I had to learn, like, for example, when they mentioned the 12 hours of the day. So then we had to think, okay, the 12 hours of the day, what do they mean by that? So I had to look back, because this was a time before the Europeans were allowed to come into Japan. And so it's only in the 1860s that Japan opened to the outside world. It had been closed for several hundred of years. So we had to understand the context and learn about the whole culture. So, for example, when I come back to time, they say the 12 hours of the day. Mm-hmm. So then I learned that, okay, there were 6 time units, or we can call it hours, but the hours were very fluent, because, for example, during the summer, the time units when the sun was up were longer, and the time units during the night were shorter. So they had a whole different way of thinking about time, and it was also related to the animals, the 12 animals. So it opened many perspectives somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I must tell you, it helped me also to research and to find other old books or books that were from the same period or before. It has taken time, and now my challenge is to, now that everything has been translated, how to make it understandable for a modern audience,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can use the techniques in our practice. Because I'm very interested in the roots of our profession, but I'm also very interested in the modern way of looking, or modern way, or more anatomical way of looking at the body. I want to bring both together. So it's not because I'm interested in the traditional stuff that I don't want to learn about the osteopathic approach to working with the organs or with the body. So I've been studying also, next to my Shiatsu practice, other manual therapies. For example, visceral manipulation or visceral osteopathy, and also anatomy trains to really understand the body, also the muscles, the more modern, or we could say more Western understanding of the body.
It sounds like you have, I'm going to call it a binocular vision, right? It's like one eye sees one thing, one eye sees the other. When the brain puts it together, you get a very three-dimensional view of reality. And it seems to me that you've got literally one foot in this pre-modern time. You're looking to understand that from its perspective. At the same time, you're right up on very modern ideas. I mean, the idea of anatomy trains, I mean, that's only come along in the past, 5 or 6 years, as I recall. I first saw that book show up, I think, 5 years ago. And I'd like to hear a little bit about how you see the pre-modern world connecting with the modern world, or maybe they don't connect, and we need to learn to understand things from two different points of view. What's your sense of it at this point in time? I'm sure if I was to ask the question a year from now, you'd have a different answer. But at this moment, with the work that you've done, how do you see these things connecting or being separate?
Yeah, it's actually through the practice that it connects, because we can look at the body from different perspectives, and more from the energetic Shiatsu way of looking, or more the physiological way of looking at the body. And I like the way I like to study. I like to learn more about the body. And that's like learning about the map somehow. And then in the practice, then during the week, I'm in the terrain. So I'm just meeting the people. And then for me, it doesn't matter if it's technique who comes from anatomy trains, or a way of looking at the body who comes from anatomy trains, or from visceral osteopathy, or if it's more working with the meridian, the Shiatsu way. Actually, as long as it works, it's great. So then at that moment, I don't think about, okay, now I'm using a technique from osteopathy or a Shiatsu technique. For me, it all becomes the same thing. It's beyond concept somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Because a big part of our Shiatsu practice is actually a meditation, a communication with someone else's body. And to be more in emptiness and to be receptive to what the body tells us. Because we can have many theories, many perspectives of looking at the body, but finally it's the answer of the body itself, or the communication of the body itself, of another human being, that will guide us in our treatment somehow.
You bring something up here that, how do I say this? It's like, it's something that's been knocking around at the edges of my awareness for a while now. And it's this thing, and you talked about it in the very beginning. I even wrote this down because I wanted to come back to it. You talked about learning through direct experience. And you talked about, I mean, you were fortunate. You had teachers that you didn't share a common verbal language, but they taught you a sensing language. I was going to say palpatory, and that's part of it, but I think there's more to sensing than simply palpation. And with acupuncture, we have all these theories, and a lot of us, and I've been there, I've got this intellectual side of me that just wants to understand stuff and tie it all together with, a nice pretty bow and say, I understand the theory, and the theory describes reality, and I can use the theory to help people. And a lot of us learn acupuncture in this way. And it's helpful to a degree that it can help to orient us. But so often we get into clinic and we go, now what? Because the theory only describes a small part of what's happening in the interaction with our patients. And so when you use the words direct experience, it brings up for me this sense of working beyond words, working outside of the framework of the maps that I have in my head. And I find for myself, being a fairly rational guy and being taught that, the mind has prominence over the body. It's something I've been trying to turn around for about 20 years now. But there's this idea that the mind, has prominence, theory has prominence, and yet if we can have a direct experience that doesn't fit our maps of the world and somehow stay with that, I suspect that there's a lot that we can learn from our patients, and we will know what to do. But there's this part of us that works out of not knowing. In fact, it's the not knowing that allows us to interact. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I must tell also, I love the theory. So, and I have the advantage, I've been teaching Shiatsu. So I have to come back because I teach every weekend. So we have weekend classes. So mostly every weekend I teach. So when I have a first year class, then I have to teach them the acupuncture meridians. When I have a second, maybe the weekend after, I have a second year. So then I have to teach them the Zen meridians, or more the Shiatsu meridians. And when I have a third year class, then I have to teach. So I have to come back every time to the theory. Then I have to teach on a third year the extraordinary vessels. So it helps me to stay connected with the theory. So that's during the weekend. And then during the week, I can forget all the theory. So then I meet the patients, and I have a meditation somehow. And that's what I want to communicate also to the person, somehow reconnecting with the body through touch. So we have a great medium with touch, that we bring the person back to the present moment. And of course, through the present, we reach also, or we touch their past and their future also. So it's not separated there also. It's a holistic medicine. So also in that sense. But I love it because we don't need to think during our treatment. We have the connection with our hands, feeling the body. Of course, some bodies are more receptive. Others are more afraid or in pain, or so it gives us more work and gives us a bigger challenge to stay connected with ourselves and with the other person somehow.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that I use to keep my practice running smoothly. So, let's talk about something that can be a little bit uncomfortable: raising your fees. I know, this is something that might feel awkward, but it doesn't have to. With a bit of planning and care, you can handle it in a way that feels right for you and your patients. One tip: give yourself at least 2 months to prepare. This gives you time to get comfortable with the change and let your patients know what's happening. You can share the news through emails, booking reminders, or even just a friendly little sign in your clinic, and avoid over-apologizing. Instead, keep it straightforward and matter-of-fact. Keeping things consistent across the ways that you communicate can really help avoid confusion. Fee increases aren't always easy, but you're not on your own here. For more tips and ideas on how to communicate these changes with confidence, check out frontdesk.jane.app and look for the article, How to Tell Your Clients You're Raising Your Fees. Oh, and one last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. I'm curious here to know how it is, if you can even describe this, of how you bring yourself to a state where you can have a direct experience with the patient, where you're not working out of your head, but you're working out of that moment of being connected. So many acupuncturists, they'll run around a clinic and they're working on 2 or 3, sometimes 5 or 8 people in an hour. And it seems to me, moving that quickly, it may be difficult to sort of settle and connect with people. Have you got some practices? Have you got some thoughts on how we can step out of the story in our head, so to speak, and get that direct experience?
For me, it's essential to do meditation on my own also. I have also my Qigong practice. I teach basic Qigong just because I enjoy it, but I'm not really teaching the serious stuff in Qigong. I'm a body worker, but to keep my practice going, my Qigong practice, I teach a little bit, and for me that's essential because we, as I told you, Shiatsu, bodywork, Ampuku, it's a manual therapy. So we have a direct communication. So that's a meditation with another person that helps us to stay more present. Because I see it in my own practice when I do meditation on my own, then I have more tendency to dream of or be occupied, or thoughts carry me away somehow. But being connected through touch with another human being, it helps me to be more present, because the other body asks me to be more present somehow. Of course, it's a whole training also. I have had good teachers who had a lot of patience with me, because I also wanted to understand through my mind, but they always bring me back to the direct experience. So I think it's also very necessary to have good teachers. And they helped me to understand through direct experience, not only because we didn't have a common language, or we had a very basic common language, but I saw it also with the Japanese students who were in the class, that there is very little space for questions. There is very little space for just theorizing. So it's okay, hands-on and just imitating the teacher. So, and it's always going back to the basics, always coming back, and that I like in the Japanese or Chinese culture. You always have the beginner's mind. Every time I come to Japan, I come to my teacher. I do the basic course. Okay, occasionally he shows me more advanced stuff, but it's always coming back to the basic stuff. And it gives confidence, it makes it more simple. And then the more advanced stuff falls on its place, or I don't know how you say in English.
No, I think it makes... what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Some years ago, I spent a number of years training in Aikido, which is Japanese martial art. And when I first started, it drove me kind of crazy because every class began with some very basic move. And it's like again and again, there were three or four very basic moves, and every class would begin with the basics. And even people that had been training in it for decades would start with the basics. And after a while, I began to realize the basics are endless. There's always something else in the basics that you can learn from. And it broadens the foundation of understanding so that things that may have seemed really complicated with the, quote, advanced stuff, it kind of falls into place then. Has this place to land. I find this in my practice as well, especially when I'm not sure what I'm doing, when I've sort of lost the scent, so to speak. I've lost the trail that I was following with a patient, right? And I start thinking in theory, and then that usually takes me further afield, and I'll just come back to, well, is it excess or deficient? Am I looking at heat or cold? Is there stagnation or a vacuity of some sort? And just coming back to these very, very basic principles. Sort of, it's a little bit like meditation, where you're sitting and you're watching your breath or whatever you use to, give yourself a center pivot. And then the mind wanders and, oh yeah, my mind's wandering, and you come back to that center pivot again. Right? Seems like the basics are super helpful for that.
Yeah. And my experience is that the information comes to me. If I start to think too much, because I also studied TCM, because somehow as a teacher I found it necessary to know more about that. I have never been too much into needling, but because I like the manual therapy. But as a teacher, I wanted to have the understanding, the TCM understanding, and it helps me. And I read also. I like to read the TCM stuff, and somehow by reading it, when I need it in a treatment, the information just comes. I had the experience the other day. I was listening to the radio, and suddenly I heard a voice from the presenter on the radio, and I heard the sound of the kidney somehow. Because I had been reading all this theory about, okay, the voice sounds like this when it's a problem with the stomach or with the kidney or whatever. But somehow, for the first time, it made sense. And it's... I'm a slow learner somehow, must be, because I've been reading and teaching this for so many years, but still, wow, suddenly I got it. I heard the sound of the kidney in the voice of the presenter. So it's such a aha moments that I love. And it's thanks to our rich tradition that we have. So we have to come back always and read the classics and read all the theory, and then we can let go of it, and then the information comes, and it's a creative process somehow. And for me, Shiatsu is an art, and or Chinese medicine or Japanese medicine or Eastern medicine. It's really an art, and we need to nourish ourselves with the classics and also by the arts, by the other arts, by painting, music, calligraphy, the foods, and to enjoy life somehow. That's the main thing we can give to our patients, to the people who come to us.
Well, you talk about being a slow learner. I'm thinking about there are certain foods, and they can only be cooked slowly. If you try to cook them quickly, they will not have the depth of flavor. They will not have the particular texture. It can only come from cooking slowly. And I think so often we're trying to cram information into our heads, and we're supposed to think we understand things, and we're supposed to get it quickly, and yet really to practice the kind of medicine that we practice, it is a process of cultivation. And it is doing exactly what you were saying. We read this and we read that, and then we do the things that allow us to enjoy life, and we let all of it go. And then in a moment when we're working with people, something arises. It just shows up. And I think it's reliable. I think that kind of thing is reliable, but it only comes with attending to our practice. And our practice is more than just what we're doing in clinic. Our practice is all the other stuff that goes into it as well.
We have to keep on learning somehow. And for me,
well,
it
that's
helps.
the fun part.
Yeah. And for me, it helps to teach also. It's and I was lucky also to assist very good teachers. So to have many years to just sit and observe how my teachers were teaching, and it's always learning first year, second year, third year, always starting over and over again. So I was fortunate to have good teachers.
Yeah, that it truly is a treasure. I'd like to shift things a little bit. I've got a couple of questions. I heard you mentioning the extraordinary vessels as something that you've read up on. I've talked with some friends of mine that are Shiatsu practitioners, and many of them have ideas about some things that we study in Chinese medicine, extraordinary vessels being one, divergent channels being another. Some of these things, I mean, I've been at this a while, but I feel like such a beginner. And especially with things like the extraordinary vessels, I find the more time I spend with extraordinary vessels, the more confused I get by them. And I'd love to get your take on what the extraordinary vessels are about and how you use them in your practice.
Yeah, when I use the extraordinary vessels, somehow it opens doors in consciousness. Somehow they are it's very hard to put words on them, because they have all their different feelings. So and they're, how to say it, it's different layers of intelligence somehow also. They are, of course, we learned in the theory that they are reservoirs in the body. And how to put words on it? Somehow
Well, let me ask it this way. You just said they have different layers of intelligence. Why don't we dig into that a little bit? That really catches my interest.
Somehow these layers of intelligence, they envelop somehow the rest of the treatment. So let's say I work with the liver, gallbladder, then it feels natural also to go to the daimai. somehow for me. But I use it very intuitively. It's not that I think great theories, but working with the kidney, working with the Chongmai, with Renmai, they are part of the same system somehow. We could say it's more deeper layers in the body that we need to address also. So they are always somehow in the back of my mind. They are always with me in the treatment. But sometime I need to go to more the acupuncture meridian or the Shiatsu meridian. And lately I have been working more and more with internal trajectories of the meridians. Because with working with the visceral manipulation, so working with the movement of the organs, then I could touch also more the internal trajectories of every organ through the fascia, through to the connective tissue. So actually, I don't make so much distinction. Okay, you can say, okay, we open the opening points of this and this extraordinary vessel, and then I work along the liver meridian or the gallbladder or the kidney. But it becomes one unity. It's but the extraordinary vessels, I think the best thing I can tell is that they envelop the rest of the work. It makes it somehow easier to digest the rest of the treatment, if I can say so, to integrate the treatment on a deeper level, because they are standing closer to the origin, to the beginning of our existence as a human being. So, yeah, I don't know if this helps a lot, but it's quite a difficult question you ask me there.
Well, I think the 8 extraordinary vessels are a difficult question. I mean, the reason I ask it is because I don't feel like I understand them well. I listen to other people talk, and it just seems to me that there's a lot of mystery around them. There's lots of different ideas about what they do and how to work with them. I mean, whereas with the regular 12 meridians, I think there's a fair amount of agreement about how things go and how you work with the 12 meridians. But you start getting into the extraordinary vessels, there's all kinds of weird ideas about those things. And I'm reluctant to say, oh, that idea is right, that idea is wrong. What I just notice is there's a lot of different thoughts about it. And as we are having this conversation, and you talk about them sort of enveloping things and that they are closer to, that which gives us life in this life. The word that comes up for me is they're more primitive, but I don't mean primitive in the sense that they're somehow less than. I mean primitive in the sense they're closer to the source. They're less differentiated. There's something that's primary about them. Yeah, a sense of not being differentiated so much. Whereas the 12 main meridians, very differentiated. The 8 extraordinary vessels, almost like, if we were to go biomedical here, they'd be more like stem cells.
Yeah, they are our basic structure somehow. So you work. That's why I talked about different doors of consciousness somehow that we can open through the extraordinary meridians. So our students and our or patients, they feel that something happens, something, dare I call it, more divine somehow, or more spiritual. But of course, the classical meridians, they have also a spiritual dimension or more divine connection. Of course, we cannot separate that. But somehow you come more to the basic structure, the simplicity, to come back about the consensus about classical meridians, because through studying older books, and I found some other Japanese older books, and it's very interesting because I always thought when I see modern acupuncture books, and in the beginning when I started there were not so many, but now there is a big diversity. There are many acupuncture books, and there is more or less a consensus about how the meridians flow, and the acupuncture meridians. But it's very interesting because when I look at some of the older books, especially in Japan, there you see it's not so straightforward, actually, that there are more connections. For example, in a modern acupuncture book here in the West, you see 2 points and you see a straight line who connects 2 points. But I have several Japanese books from the 1700s or the 1600s. When you see 2 points, they are connected by sometimes 3 lines, or some points are connected with even 10 or 20, or I say 20, maybe 10, 15 lines between different points. And for example, we know stomach 8 on the head, on the corner of the head. So we know, okay, the stomach meridian goes up, and then we have number 9 in the throat, then the meridian goes down. So in most acupuncture books, you will find it like that. But in those books, you see other connections. You see stomach 8 who connects with the renmai in the front of the head. So it's a more fluent system. And that's also something I learned. I have my brother-in-law who is an acupuncturist in Japan. And the first time I met him and I came in his practice, he had this beautiful acupuncture charts like we know. And so I thought, okay, we have a little conversation. We are therapists between each other. We can have a little conversation about meridians and to break the ice somehow. And so when I pointed out the charts he had on the walls of his practice, he said, no, that's for beginners, he said. So because his way of working with the body is really to going and sensing the meridians. So in Japan, he had a 5-year education working in the hospital, touching the person and learning more tuina kind of massage that they call ama in Japan. So that has been his base. So when he works with needles, he doesn't follow necessarily the meridians. He has a very free system of working with acupuncture, and mostly he works only with one needle that he puts on one place of the body, and then he sees how the body reacts, and then he moves the needle on another place, and so he really senses what happens in the body. So of course in Japan there are many different schools of acupuncture. So this is one of the schools. So it's very interesting because before I had this, I met these people, I had this more rigid way of seeing it, because I thought that there was a consensus, and somehow TCM has been so structured, and they have made a system out of it. So, of course, it has helped us to learn everything, the basic stuff that we know, that we have a basic ground together. But there is so much more to discover somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love hearing you talk about these different charts that show the points being connected through not just one pathway, but perhaps several pathways. And it reminds me that the map is not the territory. The map gives us a glimpse at what might be in the territory, but it's up to us to go in there and investigate it for ourselves. And once we start putting our hands on people, or we start noticing things, yeah, there's lots of different ways that points might be connected. And there's lots of different ways that the body might be connected that we would be very surprised about. I mean, this is one of the things I think is so fascinating about the other part of the study that you're doing these days with the anatomy trains, with the visceral work, that there are other maps, other ways of sensing, other ways of being attentive to what the body might have to say. I have one of my teachers, one of my very first acupuncture teachers, is also an osteopath who does a lot of hands-on sensing. And I remember he's always talking about learning to just feel what you feel. Trust that you feel what you feel. You'll make sense of it later, maybe, but that once you begin to sense into things that way, there's all kinds of information that will come up. And you'll have no idea what it means, but you just keep sensing and paying attention to it and seeing where it takes you. There's all kinds of stuff in there. And I love this idea that there are charts out there that remind us there's more than one way to think about how these things go together. That's especially these days with everything being so standardized, quote, evidence-based, that there's one way to do it. There's one way to think about it. I mean, certainly to pass an exam, to get a license, you better know that stuff. And while it will help you to get your license, I don't know if it necessarily helps us to practice. I think actually practicing requires quite a bit of unlearning of what we got in school.
Yeah, that's why my teachers always told me, okay, when I passed the final exam, then that was like getting the driving license, and then you have to go out on the roads and experience the whole thing. But what is so rich in our culture is that we study also another culture. We study China or Japan, and it helps us to get another perspective. I must tell, okay, I learn visceral osteopathy, I learn anatomy trains, but I stay always true to what I learned from the Shiatsu. So the yin and the yang, the 5 elements. So that's my base. So I made it clear for myself, I will not mix the theory somehow. So I want to have a clear picture so that I stick with the Japanese perspective. But of course, I can go and look around and try to understand it from that perspective, with also learning the perspective of anatomy. So, but it's so rich to learn, in another language, to learn to see things different. So that we can also give that perspective to our patients, and at the same time communicate in a language they can understand, that it's not too esoteric somehow.
Imagine this. A patient walks into your clinic. They're carrying more than the pain in their body. There's a story there. A history woven with the stress of long days, the ache of things unsaid, and the quiet longing for something to shift. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your hands, your intuition, your heart. It's not just about needles or a formula. It's about connection, understanding the threads that tie us together, mind, body, and spirit. That is where golden flower Chinese herbs comes in. Rooted in tradition and crafted with care, their formulas are more than herbs. They're a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern practice. Every bottle, a quiet partner in your work, helping you to meet your patients where they are. Because healing isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about creating trust, cultivating belonging, and helping someone feel truly seen. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs, your partner in practice and connection, where tradition meets care. Yeah, that I find is often a challenge, to communicate with my patients in a language that they understand and yet be able to express what I'm seeing, feeling, sensing, working with from our East Asian medicine perspective. That making that translation can be really tricky.
Yeah, it depends on the person we meet. Some people have more understanding, or some people think also they have a better understanding. So some people think they know about the 5 elements or the yin and the yang, but that's also okay. Some people have a more basic understanding, and then we can help them to deepen that, or learn something from them. That can also happen.
You know, that happens all the time.
Yeah,
I find I'm constantly learning from my patients. Oh man.
And learning, something I was thinking about before this podcast, I learned a lot by receiving treatments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially as a manual therapist, I received hundreds of treatments, rolfing. I went for long periods for rolfing, for visceral osteopathy, all the fascia work was very fascinating, because we can learn it from specialists who have dedicated their life somehow to learn about the fascia. And when they touch us, we have a direct experience. How does it feel with the fascia? But I also enjoy the Ayurvedic treatments, more with the oil, how they touch the body. And I have had, I was fortunate to live 12 years in Sweden, so I experienced a lot of Swedish massage. Then you feel the practitioner who is focused on the muscles and who want to free the muscles. And that gives another perspective. It's not by learning all the different names of the muscles, who can be fun, and all the connections and so on, can be very interesting, but by being touched in our own muscles and to feel a practitioner who feels at home in the muscles opens that perspective. So for me, that has been a great learning by receiving.
Well, this brings us back to where we started in some ways, talking about direct experience, and that we can have the direct experience of being the practitioner, using our intention, using our skill, using our senses to interact with the patient. But then there's that other side of being able to receive. And in some ways we are so freed up when we're on the receiving side, because we're not trying to do something. We're not trying to make something happen. We don't have an agenda. Most people come to our offices with an agenda of wanting to feel better, and we take on the agenda of wanting them to help them feel better. But when we're just on the receiving side, just that deep yin, allowing it in, that bypasses all the intellectual circuitry and just lets the body deeply get a sense of things, doesn't it? That makes tremendous sense.
and also to see how the practitioner sees us. So when I go into practice, I meet a new therapist, and I go there for a rolfing session or whatever, or just a physiotherapist or whatever, or to an acupuncturist. I love acupuncture. I love to receive acupuncture. So to see how they look at us, how they look at me. Do they see me? So do they see my potential, and do they want to help me to free my potential, or do they see me as a problem and as something they have to fix somehow? And that's sometimes my experience, especially in the West. When I go to a practitioner, they think, okay, there comes in Philippe, and with all his problems, and they think, okay, how can I help this guy? I see, okay, his kidney is not this good, and that, and I see them thinking, how can I fix this problem? And mostly then I don't go back. When I go to a practitioner who sees, okay, Philippe has this imbalance, like we all have our imbalances, and he touches my imbalances, but in a way to help me to free my potential somehow. That's a big lesson when we meet such a practitioners who have gone beyond the problem somehow. And that's something that I learned from meeting great practitioners. That's when I meet a person, to put them at ease, to have a great time together, and to show them all their strengths.
Yes.
Because if they are very sick, they must be very strong also. So, because you cannot survive cancer or all these problems that people come to us with if you are not very strong. And we have this amazing potential in our body. And that's the focus of my treatment, to work with the potential of the human being and to help them, because we have learned all this, looking at imbalances, looking at heat, whatever, all the ways of looking at the body. But all those things are there to help us to see the potential in the human being, and not to look at the problem somehow.
Yeah. You know, in our world as it is right now, so often we look at the problem. And, you know, our sort of air quotes here job is to, air quotes again, fix what's going on with people. And in some ways, I think this is dangerous for us as practitioners as well, because then it's easy to get this sort of inflated sense of who we are because, oh, look at me, I can fix this person over here. I find that will often backfire for me. As soon as I start thinking, oh yeah, I've got this, I understand this, and I'm fixing them, usually things will go off the rails at that very shortly after that. Because I mean, we get this beautiful experience of getting to accompany people, but they are doing the work. And we might get to help show them and unlock some potential, or help them, better yet, help them unlock their potential. And then things will change. And it's not us who's doing it. No. It's them who's doing it. People will often ask me, wow, how did you put that into me with acupuncture? Something just happened, or they'll have this state that they come out of the treatment and they've got that quiet, right? They've got that stillness, and they go, well, where did that come from? And I said, it comes from you. Acupuncture puts nothing into you. I suspect the work you do puts nothing into people. It only can call out what's already there. And that really is unlimited potential.
Great. Yeah, you put the correct words on it. So,
Well, it's just, I mean, we've got this lovely idea in East Asian medicine and philosophy that there's this thing called the zheng qi, right? The zheng qi, the upright qi, the stuff that's always right, the stuff that never can be made sick. It's all, you know, even up into our moment of death, it's there.
yeah.
And, you know, this whole idea of being able to recognize that we're here to help unlock something that's already in our patients is, I mean, I find it very enticing. It makes me want to go to work. And then I think about, you know, being asked by our modern materialistic world saying, well, have you got evidence to show that this is there?
Yeah.
And I find I have absolutely no interest in answering that question.
Yeah. I just come back from a weekend with my Qigong teacher, and it was wonderful because the thing she said was that, yeah, if you know that you're on the good track, it's because you feel more joy and you feel more gratitude. And that's the right thing. It's if we can feel joy, if we can feel that it just comes natural. It's not something we have to look for, but just through the practice that we can feel the gratitude to do this wonderful job that we have, to feel the joy and to, yeah, like she talked a lot about, or not so much, she just talked a little bit about the virtues, like the kindness, and actually that's the work we are doing, cultivating the virtues, and without becoming too spiritual about it or having ideas about spirituality, just to feel the joy, to feel the gratitude to be alive and to be touching other human beings and communicate and being alive.
Well, that sounds like an awful good practice for a practice. Hey, I just want to ask you, we're getting close to an end time here. Tell us a little more about your book in terms of when it will be published and how we can get, what languages it will be in and how we can get our hands on it.
So it will be published in English. So of course I get help. It's not my language, English. So I write a little bit in French, in Dutch, who is my language. So then I get help of my English teacher, so who will help me to put the correct words on it. So it takes time. So the translation, the old books are translated. So now it's just my job to make it practical somehow. And soon we will have our base in Japan. So we have been living many years in Brussels now, but now it's time to change perspective. So I want to have the perspective to look now from the east to the west somehow, to be immersed in the Japanese culture, to eat the Japanese foods, to have Japanese people around me, also a few Westerners, of course. But I want to look from Japan to the West now. So that will be the next decades. That will be like that. So I will be coming to Belgium to teach. We continue the school in Belgium, so I come twice a year here. And I teach also in a few other schools here in Europe. But the main time I want to spend in the culture I love. So that's why we are preparing our move.
Oh, wow.
Quite
That's
soon.
huge.
So.
Wow. In the book, I understand books take a long time. Being in the middle of a book project myself, it always takes way longer than I imagined. Which I think is probably helpful, because if you think, hey, I can get this done in 9 or 10 months, then you'll begin. Whereas if you're thinking, yeah, maybe it'll be 2 or 3 years, you know, you may never even start. But with that in mind, is there a date when we might be able to hold this translation in our hands?
Yeah, I don't dare to promise, but because I have done that a lot now. So it's already 4 or 5 years that I'm working on it. I didn't promise anything, but people have been asking because I talked about the book. But the deadline is, end of the year, next spring. So by then it has to be ready. So that will be spring 2020. So then the book has to be ready.
Okay, great. It's we're talking about slow cooked meals, and I think good books are slow cooked. So I'll look forward to reading that. Philippe, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a delightful conversation, and gosh, I'd love to come visit in Japan. That would be fun.
Yeah, you're most welcome. And thank you very much, Michael. And thanks for your wonderful podcast. I'm listening very often to the podcast. I enjoy it. And continue the good work. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.